Hi, welcome. So, congratulations on making it to week 6. So, week 6 is all about letting go. Really, the emotional and mental dimensions of the medicine wheel really take up a big part of what we need to do to balance. And so, as you've noticed, the majority of the modules have really been about balancing our emotional and mental dimensions. And letting go is really another part of how we help to balance that. And so, what this module is going to be talking to you about is really talking to you about the importance of trust and balancing our divine feminine masculine energies in order for us to let go. And, I have to say, this has been pivotal to my unmasking and evolving. This module, really was, a birth, and it took many weeks, many months, many years to really be able to understand it in a way that I could present it to you. This, and as I've said in all my other modules, is not something I've mastered. We are all a work in progress. We are all perfectly imperfect. We all are really trying to step into our power and live authentically. And we have days where we show up and we have days when we don't. And what's important is that we just have to keep going. And what I've learned is that what has helped me to be able to let go is trust. And trust, many people will say, I don't, I have problems with trust. I don't trust for a variety of reasons. And, and I was one of those people. I've done the work. I've spent a lot of time thinking about why I don't trust, and I've been able to, think about my lack or distrust in others, comes from my core wounds, from not having my emotional needs met when I was a child. And, I don't share this part of my journey with, live on our Facebook group because of I don't want to harm or hurt my family members who are watching. And so I'm an adult child of alcoholics. I have a food addiction. My brothers are alcoholics. And that has impacted my life in a big way. I'm the cog in the wheel that is changing the way that I live and parent and how my, my legacy will go on. And so living in a household that was full of chaos, full of unfilled promises, not really being able to understand or predict what things were going to be happening, really being kind of sloughed off to the back because my parents were living their lives and partying and having a great time. And as a child, I felt or I feel that we were afterthoughts, that alcohol was always chosen over us as children. Do I love my parents? Absolutely. Did I have a great childhood? Absolutely. Do I feel they did the best that they could? Absolutely, because they grew up in similar families. My grandparents, that generation, they partied, right? And so, you do the best that you know how. We learn to parent by how we were parented, right? And it's only until we have a realization that, hey, this isn't working. I need to do something different. I need to learn. Do we change? And so, I felt, I had really good reasons not to trust. But what I realized is the reason why I don't trust others is because I don't trust myself. That's huge, right? That's huge. And that was a big aha moment for me. I don't trust myself, which is why I seek external validation, which is why I ignore my intuition, which is why I people please, which is why I control my environment, which is why I'm a perfectionist, right? Or reaching for that. It's because I don't trust myself, and I equate my value and my worth based on what other people think, feel, say. That's a really dangerous way to live our lives, right? It closes us off from so many opportunities, from relationships. For me, because I don't trust myself and I don't trust others, it's affected my ability to really have really close, healthy relationships. And so, being aware that we have issues with trust. Most of us can say, that we have issues with trusting other people. But not many of us really can own the fact that we have trust issues with ourselves, right? And in order to change that, we have to have balance, and we have to let go of certain things and certain mindsets and certain behaviors. Really, our journey to living authentically is not really it is adding more tools, but it's also unmasking, right? It's letting go, it's releasing, it's getting rid of the habits and lifestyle changes and thought patterns that keep us stuck, right? So letting go is really important. So in order for us to balance, we need to balance our divine feminine and divine masculine energies. And you're probably thinking, like, Shasta, what the hell is that? It has nothing to do with gender, right? We have to really view the world in polarities, right? Polarities in the Chinese culture, it's yin and yang, right? In the Indian culture, it's very much Shakti and Shiva, right? That's the female, male gods. In life, we have good and bad, light and darkness. We have polarities and everything, and they need to exist in balance, right? It's unrealistic to think that our life is going to be wonderful all of the time. It's unrealistic, but most of us are trying to achieve that. We automatically, if something goes wrong in our lives, we beat ourselves up. We think that we should have been able to prevent it. We sit in our victim role, licking our wounds, kind of whining about how the world is beating up on us, instead of seeing it as that we're riding a wave, right? That every opportunity that we have in our life, those experiences that, knock us around, they come with a lot of teaching and learning, right? So I am incredibly blessed by losing my house in a house fire. That was a huge pivotal moment for me in my journey. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that hurt and that pain. I mean, life is painful at times, and that's okay, right? Because the yin of that is joy and happiness and ease. I mean, we have to have darkness with the light. And so what I became more aware of divine feminine and masculine energy when I started working with my life coach. And my life coach was really talking about balancing our chakras. And in order to balance our chakras, we really need to, honor our divine feminine energy, because we live in a world that is very masculine. We live in a patriarchal society. So when I think about feminine energy, what I'm talking about energy that is flowy and flirty and sensual and empathetic and intuitive and nurturing and flexible. It's creative. It's fun. Divine feminine energy is about being, right? Whereas masculine energy, equally as important. It's not good or bad. We need both. Masculine energy is goal-oriented. It's strong. It's concrete. It's logical. It's structured. It's driven. It's about being, right? It's a very physical thing. And the thing is you can see the benefit of both. We need both. In order for us to grow a business, we need to be, motivated and driven, and we need to have goals, and we need to have a plan. But in order for us to grow, we also need creativity, right? When we think about, the most amazing inventions in our world, it took creativity. It took people to think outside the box, to try and fail and not be scared of it, right? Because when we are standing in too much masculine energy, we're scared. We're fearful. We're controlling. We're perfectionists. We're stuffy, right? But when we're too feminine and we're living in our feminine energy too much, we're bleeding hearts, right? We're so empathetic that the weight of the world and feeling the world so intensely becomes exhausting, right? And so we can't live in those two extremes. We have to have a bit of both and have it very balanced. And what I learned is that this is really key in trust, right? It's key in trust. It's key in being balanced in the medicine wheel, is that it's honoring both the feminine, divine feminine and divine masculine energy. And yeah, so I just have some notes I did some notes and I wanted to show them to you, but unfortunately it doesn't come up on the video very well, so it's not helpful. But all of this of what I'm saying is in the written document in the module. Certainly the module can't encompass all aspects of letting go. It's such a huge topic, but I've picked out some tidbits that I really think are foundational places to start to get us on our journey. So when we think about letting go, when we think about the things that we need to let go of, and what this module is looking at is really, in order for us to trust, we have to let go of certainty. We live in a world where we really want to know the odds before we make a decision. We want a lot of information. Say if we get a gut instinct, like, this job isn't for me, I want to quit. We don't trust that gut instinct. We go to our colleagues and say, hey, this is what's happened. I want to quit. What do you think? So we talk to a lot of people, we get a lot of information, and we feel that information is far more important than what our gut is. And part of the reason why that is because with certainty, we don't like to take risk. And if we ask other people their opinions, then when we make a decision, we don't have to take ownership of blame if we fail. That's big, right? We don't have to take ownership over our decision if we fail, because we've asked a whole bunch of people what their opinions are and they agreed with us. So yeah. So we live in a world that wants to know and wants a guarantee 100% that we're not going to fail. But the thing is there's beauty in failure. Nothing great gets developed if we don't fail, right? If we don't try again. And I think in our society, we lack the ability to fail gracefully. We don't teach our children to fail. We expect them to be perfect. We prevent them from failing sometimes as parents, right? Because we don't want them to hurt. But it's important that we experience that. And so when we let go of certainty, we can cultivate intuition and trust, right? Trust and faith. And faith doesn't have to be religious. It's really trusting that, and this has been huge for me. It's trusting that I am not the center of the world, that I don't have to take all that ownership of every decision, and trusting that I'm exactly where I need to be, and that things are happening for a reason, and that I can look at those situations, good or bad, and see the lessons and see the blessings, right? It becomes very freeing when you stop agonizing over the results, right? You just lean in. Lean into your fear. Easier said than done. However, it's important. And so for me, working in a healthcare profession as a nurse practitioner, I've seen some really awful things. And I wouldn't be able to accept it and heal from those past traumas if I didn't have trust and faith that there was some bigger meaning out there. I wouldn't. Because how can you accept, a parent losing a child? How can you accept, you know, loss, someone dying of cancer, somebody, who was, the perfect poster health child that goes for a marathon run and dies of a heart attack? How can we understand that? How can we wrap our mind around why that would happen? And so how I do that is that I have to have faith that there's a bigger meaning and that things happen for a reason and that there's a lesson for the people that are left behind and that it is part of their journey, right? And that is really important. The other thing about trusting is about honestly seeing people's reactions is a reflection of their strengths and their tragedies, right? So we respond based on our life experience, right? So I can't expect people to respond to the same situation I do in the same way. And so I have to just trust that they are doing the best that they can. And the reason why I do that, the reason why I believe that, as a nurse practitioner or as a nurse in the emergency department, I saw child abuse. And I saw some horrible cases of shaken baby. And in that moment, did I believe that parent was, their intention was to hurt their child? Absolutely not. And me saying that pisses a lot of people off. Absolutely not. They had a moment of inability to cope, and they reacted in a way that was unfavorable. And I'm going to say that again, is that they had a moment, an inability to cope, and they reacted in an unfavorable way. And we all have done that. Like when I think about me parenting my little one and she's having a temper tantrum, have I screamed at her and had an equally forceful temper tantrum? Have I had to lock myself in the bathroom because I thought I was going to shake her? Absolutely. But I have the knowledge and the skills and the ability to pull myself out and the support to be able to pull myself out of those situations so that I don't react, right? Not everybody has that ability to do that. Not everybody has that support. And it is not up to us to judge. And so trusting that, people are inherently good in this world is important. It's really important because if you see the world as a deep, dark place, it is a deep, dark place. Listening to our intuition is really important. And using that as evidence as we make decisions. And this can be important when we're making decisions or when so if we're, agonizing about a decision, we need to really weigh in with how we feel. But we also it needs to raise red flags if we're rushing to a decision because we don't want to deal with it, right? And there's a red flag there, right? If we're just rushing to make a decision without putting much thought, even, connecting with ourselves, seeing what our intuition, because we just don't have the capacity to deal with it. That's a red flag. The next thing we need to do is we really need to let go of what people think. We have to stop giving a fuck. Really. And so that we can cultivate authenticity, right? When we care about what people think, we live our lives trying to people please, trying to avoid conflict, trying to, disguise ourselves, let other people make decisions for us, not speak up, not really having opinion about anything. And I was that person. I would just be quiet. I would agree, grin and nod. I, got out of, graduated from my master's program. I went and bought my 4-bedroom house. We had our 2 cars. The next step was having a baby, because that's what people do, right? Because that's what people do. And it wasn't until the fire of our home that I woke up and I thought, who the hell am I? I didn't recognize myself. I didn't know what I liked, what I disliked. I didn't know anything about myself except that I was a nurse, and that was my entire identity. And that was the start of that. But I didn't probe that. I didn't research that. I got stuck in the wheel of just doing, of being in that masculine energy, of being focused on getting our house rebuilt, refurnishing it, doing all that stuff. Time went by. And then I experienced burnout. And I was in bed for 6 months. And I had an existential crisis. Because as I was laying in bed, I didn't know who I was. And now I wasn't capable of working. So my identity was gone. And I felt shameful about not being able to handle it and becoming so mentally ill. I remember saying to my husband that I'd wished that I had been hit by a car so that I could have physical breaks to justify me being on sick leave. Crazy. But I know that I'm not alone. I know that because of the stigma in our mental health system, I know that I'm not alone. I know a lot of people. And I felt so empty, and I felt a lot of shame and guilt, and I had no idea who I was. I was so disconnected. I almost didn't even know my husband, And so it took a long time, and that was the beginning of my journey. That was the beginning of saying, okay, I need to get to know myself. And living authentically is hard. It's exhausting because we have to be honest. We have to speak our truth. We have to be raw and real. And not everybody likes that. And that's okay. That's okay. And so am I authentic every single day? Absolutely not. Is my goal to come and be authentic all the time? Absolutely. And so, authenticity is difficult because we live in a world of judgment, self-judgment, external judgment. Everybody, wants to be, smarter, make more money, look thinner, more, we live in a society that nothing is ever good enough. Nothing. We're climbing this ladder and we don't even know what the destination is. And so this perpetual hamster wheel creates a lot of stress. And so living authentically and speaking up and saying, I don't agree with what you're saying. I don't want to go to this dinner party. I would rather do this, and getting rid of the shoulds. It's exhausting, right? Because people will push up against our boundaries. And so there's times where we just tap out and say, you know what? I'm just going to go into my cocoon and, be a people pleaser. But the thing is we miss out, right? We miss out on life when we do that, because we end up living very small and we don't live to our potential, right? If we don't have a voice, if we don't have an opinion, some might say we're a pushover, right? Some might say we're uninteresting. But we can't amount to great things and step into our power without living authentically, right? Without speaking our truth. So the next thing that's really important to let go of is comparison. And so the things that I'm talking about, letting go of certainty, letting go of what people think, letting go of comparison, these are very much ways to shift the balance, to increase our feminine energy, right? So this module is very much about focusing on feminine energy. How do we balance that out? The next module, module 7, will be about, okay, what do we need to do to balance the masculine, divine masculine energy? And that's really going to be about letting go of control and perfectionism, because that needs a lot of space, because that's a big topic. So with living authentically, we have to do two things. One is we have to set up boundaries. And boundaries are important because it really is a way that we cultivate a self-identity, because we're following our values, right? If we don't have boundaries, then we don't have a clear set of what things that we value. It's really important for self-love, because it really is self-care. Self-care, boundaries are a way of providing self-care. And it's showing ourselves self-love because we have self-respect, right? Because we value our time and our energy and our money and whatever, right? Because we're showing ourselves respect, and we're not just giving that away to everybody and anybody. Boundaries are essential. And this is something that I struggle with. Oh man, do I struggle with boundaries. And what I know, and what I've begun to understand, is that when I have good boundaries, I have an infinite amount of energy. I feel good, I feel present. But when I have poor boundaries with people, I feel drained and exhausted, and I don't show up. I don't show up for myself, right? And my self-love and compassion for myself gets put on the back burner. My self-care gets put on the back burner. And so it's really important. The other thing that's important is that we have to change our mindset, in the sense that we have to stop giving a fuck about what other people think. And the reason why that's important is because, and how to understand this is, right, if we think about how many thoughts that we have in the day, and I'm sure we've all had a conversation where we go and we have a conversation with somebody and we come home and we ruminate about it and say, oh, did that sound stupid? Oh, I hope I didn't offend them. Oh. And then we're in this cycle in our head, focusing on it. But that person doesn't give a shit. They don't care. We have something like 50,000 thoughts going through our head at in any 24-hour period. And even if they thought about us 8 times within that 24-hour period, that's really a 0.02% amount of time that they're even thinking about us. And so we need to realize that our ego really just wants to think about ourselves. Everybody's ego just wants them to think about themselves. So really, honestly, when we think about what we would tell our friend, if our friend, had a conversation with us and our friend said, did I sound stupid? And we say, no, really, seriously, don't worry about it. We need to remember that, because honestly, most people don't care. Most people don't think a second thought. Even if you said something deplorable, most people won't have the guts to call you on it. So let go, right? Let go. Yeah. Big, right? So the next thing is really getting rid of comparison. We are awful. I know I am awful about looking at people and saying, I'm 40 and I should have this sort of financial wealth and security, my RSPs, blah, 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 blah. I should have, this kind of house and this kind of car. And I should, my friends who are in the same stage, they're, comparing myself to them. And the reality is then it takes us away from being grateful for what we have in this moment, right? Grateful for what we have in this moment. It makes us all the hard work that we've done, everything that we've achieved in our life, it makes us not even acknowledge that it exists. And so life becomes heavy and draining. and really unpleasant when we keep looking over the fence and saying the grass is greener on the other side, because it's not. The reality is everybody has their challenges. They may not share them with you and it may appear to be perfect, but you know, I don't think there's any such thing as perfection. Everybody has their struggles. Whether they're transparent and honest and authentic about it and show their vulnerability is a different thing. But the grass isn't always greener at the other side. And you know what? If we're focusing so much on them, then we have too much time on our hands, quite frankly. Then you are not doing what you need to do to get yourself where you want to be, right? So if you are focused on starting a business, changing your health habits, changing yourself, evolving, if you are worried about somebody else and what they're doing or what they're saying, then you have too much time on your hands. Period. And you need to focus on what you can do, what you do have control over, and quit, and quit having the thought. Just stop it. I know that sounds silly, but yeah, it's just, tell yourself when those thoughts come into your head, stop it and focus on what you can do. So when we think about the different levels of imbalances with the divine feminine and divine masculine, when we have way too much feminine energy, when the majority of the balance is feminine, we feel before we understand. We have a lot of integrity. When people are in our presence, they feel really special. Our strength. So when we have a lot of feminine energy, what is the strength? The strength is that we're honest and we're vulnerable and we're transparent and we're authentic. What's the imbalance? We're an empath, right? And we're an energy sponge. And so this leaks us of all of our energy. And then we end up ruminating, right? So we ruminate about that one negative comment instead of seeing all the positivity of the day. So we can get really stuck in our head. What are tools to help us when we have way too much feminine energy? The tools really are things that allow us to process our emotions and our feelings. We have to give it space. We have to give it time. And for many of us, we don't. We push away, defer. We try to push that down. And we do that in a variety of ways. For me, it's food. When I start feeling stuff, things start bubbling up. I get food cravings. It's like, give me something. Give me a hit of something because I don't want to deal with it. Other people, it might be alcohol. It might be drugs. It might be video games, it might be gambling, it might be sex, it might be a variety of things. Our phones, we are connected to social media in a way that is very, very unhelpful. And so things that help us process these emotions are, meditation and grounding and journaling and napping and a lot of self-care, right? So that we can really focus on what we're feeling, identifying whether it's ours or whether it's someone else's, because as an empath, we absorb other people's energy, and letting it go and processing and letting it go. Because when we feel it and process it, it doesn't last very long. It's when we're constantly avoiding, diverting, pushing it down, stuffing it down, numbing out, that it comes back in a vengeance. It comes back in a vengeance and it becomes completely overwhelming. The downfall of having too much feminine energy is that we end up isolating ourselves because the world, it's exhausting, right? It's exhausting to be such an intense feeler. And so we pull away because when we do go out into the world, it's so exhausting that we have to come back and spend twice the amount of time recuperating and recovering from all of that energy. But a way to prevent that isolation is certainly balancing in other ways, but is about volunteering. It's about doing random acts of kindness, right? So giving can be a nice way to balance that out. When we get a bit of a 60-40 split of energy, so a 60% split of feminine energy, a 40% split of masculine energy, we're still very sensitive. We're very self-aware. we're really curious, and we tend to go with the flow a bit better, right? And this is not a bad place to be, right? The strength really is that we create safe spaces for the people that are around us, including ourselves. We are really good advocates. We will advocate for ourselves and for other people. The imbalance comes with, we're able to go with the flow if it benefits us personally. And if it doesn't benefit us personally and we feel like we're being taken advantage of, then we end up getting bitter, and we get resentful, and we very quickly jump to assumptions without really clearly listening and trying to understand where someone's coming from. This, the tools for this that help us balance it out is that people who are, have a 60-40 split of feminine and masculine energy, it's pretty good, right? They really have some logic, and they like things that are a bit more concrete. And so they like things that are packaged neatly, that have an exact outcome. So they like to use creativity. So they like to do an activity where they work on it, they complete it, and there's something to show for it. And so, they like things that have motion to it, that are measurable. So, you go and you do a pottery class and you actually come out with a cup or a bowl or a mug afterwards, versus journaling, which may, certainly we're dumping, but they don't necessarily appreciate the outcome as much. With people who are a lot more masculine, have a lot more masculine energy, so it's 80% masculine, 20% feminine, these people really, are also very, balanced in a way. They are very open-minded, kind-hearted. I'm just going to pull my notes towards me so I can see them. They're very passionate. They're very playful. They are future-orientated. Sorry, the light is bad. And their strengths is that people are drawn to them. They love to learn, and they have a really good work-life balance. And that's really important, because for me, that is the hardest thing I find. I throw myself into my work, and gaining a work-life balance is really difficult for me. Their imbalances, though, can be that they feel stuck. They get a lot of anxiety. They can really get ungrateful about what they've accomplished, and they can really sabotage their own happiness, because because they have that higher masculine energy. They're really climbing up a ladder trying to achieve. So what's really important is creativity, really nurturing curiosity. So taking a class, learning a skill, taking a music class and learning guitar, or taking a knitting class or something, or a language where there's an accumulation. Having a bucket list of adventures is very creative for them, where they feel like, oh, I've traveled to these places, I've seen these things, because they love to learn. When we're 100% masculine, we're very boss oriented, right? We're very type A personality. We are driven. We are goal oriented. We're motivated. We have extra energy. We are, this drive for success is huge, and it can be very positive, right? All of that is very positive. As a very masculine thinker, your big picture, you are a problem solver. You're a natural born leader. The imbalances come with that type A personality, which is something that I really struggle with, is that need for control, that need for perfectionism, right? And, their biggest imbalance is really the need to trust, because they have a really hard time delegating. So learning to delegate where we don't have to have our hands in everything, right? So I'm growing a business right now. I am solo, I am doing it, but I'm already starting to think, I'm going to need more people on my team, and what are the things that I can give up, right? bookkeeping, you know, Facebook ad management. Like, these are things that I can give up because it's important that I focus on my strengths. And my strengths are talking to you guys. My strengths are being, in front of my patients. The paperwork and the minutia that comes with it. Can I do it? Yes. Does it bring me joy? Sort of. But it's really about delegating and letting other people's take over and trusting that they have the skill and the judgment. I mean, when you think about any successful leader, they focus on what their strengths are, and then they hire people that fill their weaknesses, and then they hold them tight, because then there is no deficits, right? There's no deficiencies, because you have people that balance you where you may have imbalances. And so the biggest thing really for somebody who is 100% masculine is that and being a perfectionist, we have unrealistic expectations, and we project those expectations on other people, and we think people can read our minds. And what I've learned is that when I get really emotional about somebody's reaction, because they didn't respond in the way that I would have, I have to stop myself and think, am I projecting my values and beliefs on them? And most of the time it is, right? Because I want to bitch and say, you know what, that person was rude and they didn't come and say good morning, and why don't they do that? And I always do that, right? Have you ever had this conversation with yourself? And then I have to stop for a second and say, am I projecting my values? Yeah, my value is that I invest in my team. And so I do say good morning. I want to know about their personal life, but not everybody has that value, right? Some people see their work as just a job. It's just a paycheck, and that's okay, right? But it's not up to me to judge, right? And so in that moment, I'm not being coming from a place of kindness. So I want to leave you with this. When we're letting go, and we're trying to balance the masculine with the feminine, I ask myself this a lot lately, is what would a calm, confident, centered individual do? Right? Because calm and centered really helps to emulate that feminine energy, and that centeredness and confidence really embodies that masculine energy. And so when I'm thinking about, say, things in my business, and I say I'm working, in the day, and I decide I don't feel like working, and of course I'm working at home, and I'm going to go and put some trashy television on in the middle of the day, I ask myself, is this something that a calm, confident, 7-figure businesswoman would do? No, absolutely not, right? So easy to make that delineation. But when we're sitting in ourselves and we're like, oh, I don't feel like doing it. But the reality is we need that drive. So ask yourself, what would a calm, confident, centered individual say? Especially when we're having hard conversations, especially when we're imposing boundaries. The reality is we can put up a boundary honestly and with great kindness and respect. We don't have to be an asshole about it, right? If somebody invites me for dinner on a Sunday night and my favorite television show is playing at that night and I don't want to watch it later, it's okay to say, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm busy. And you're being respectful. You're honoring your own time. You're honoring the things that light you up and the things that you enjoy, but you're also being respectful and being honest, right? Versus feeling resentful, not being present in the conversation and enjoying the company and the food and the celebration, and just wishing that you were sitting on your couch watching your favorite show, right? So we really need to start honoring ourselves in a big, big way. So I hope this video was a great supplement to the written information. This is a big module. There's a lot of work in it. But I know that you are going to come out on the other side with a new perspective and with further evolution. I've added some supplementary videos, and a kind of a workbook on boundaries that will help, because boundaries in itself and setting boundaries could be a module in itself. So I hope that this module serves you well in your journey. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week. Take care.